More third declension nouns. This time we'll be looking at third declension nouns with stems ending in vowels and the digamma, which I will tell you about in a minute. You can follow along in Athenaze Chapter 9 Beta, pages 145 to 146. First up, stems ending in vowels. For example, we'll be using polis, poleos, and ostu, osteos. Ostu is the smaller unit that refers to the city, and is part of the larger unit, the polis, which is the city-state. So first up, we are looking at polis, poleos. There are two stems. The first one, poli, can be seen in the nominative, accusative, and vocative singular, and the second one, pole, can be seen everywhere else. Let's go through the motions and add the expected endings. So to the nominative singular you add sigma and you're done. To the accusative singular you add new, which is perhaps not what you'd expect because other third declension nouns you add alpha. What's happened here is that the regular pattern is if the stem ends in a vowel, like poli, you add a new. This is what we saw in the first and second declensions. So for example, the accusative singular of krene is krenen, and the accusative singular of agros is agron. In our other third declension nouns, they've usually ended in consonants, and so to get the accusative singular we've added alpha instead, like in pais. The accusative singular is paida. So from that, that is why we have the accusative singular new. For the genitive singular, the ending is omega sigma, which again might look a little weird to you because you're expecting omicron sigma. What's happened here is that it was originally poleos with an eta omicron sigma, and that last syllable is short, which causes the accent to be on the antepenult, po. And then after some changes happen, the accent remains there, which is why you have the accent as it stands on the antepenult, even though the ultima omega sigma is long. So what's happened here is that the original stem was pole with an eta, and we added our omicron sigma. And then a process called quantitative metathesis occurred, which means there was an exchange of the quantities of vowels. So the long eta plus short omicron became a short epsilon plus a long omega and gave us poleos from polaos. From this, we get a new stem, pole, ending in epsilon, which we then see in the remaining forms like the dative singular. For the dative singular, we add an iota, just like you would expect, except instead of pronouncing it pole-e, those two come together in a diphthong and it's pole, two syllables. The vocative singular is simply the stem pole with the iota. The nominative plural, you add your expected ending epsilon sigma, and those two epsilons contract to epsilon iota, and you get poles. Genitive plural, you add your expected ending omega nu, and the accent is on the first syllable purely by analogy to that genitive singular. Dative plural, you add your expected ending sigma iota, and you're done. Accusative plural, by analogy to nominative plural, looks exactly like the nominative plural. So it's not what you would expect. The vocative plural looks exactly like the nominative plural. The other word that follows this pattern is ostu, osteos, which is similar with the only differences being that it's neuter. So your stems are ostu and oste with an epsilon. And because it's neuter, obviously the accusative and vocative singular are going to look exactly like the nominative. Otherwise, the things you learned about genitive and dative singular still apply. In the nominative plural, you add your expected ending alpha, and then the epsilon alpha contracts into an eta. Then you see things as you would expect in the genitive and dative, and then the accusative and vocative, as you'd expect with the neuter, are going to be identical to the nominative. So now let's look at stems that end in that digamma, which is a semi-vowel. It was originally pronounced w, as a W sound in English. And semi-vowel means that it's kind of a vowel, kind of a consonant. And the reason it's called digamma is that the written letter for this sound was formed by putting two gammas on top of one another, so digamma. There are three nouns that you're going to learn that had the original stem ending in digamma. Basilew was that stem, meaning king. Neu was the stem for the word for ship, and bow was a stem for the word for ox. So let's add sigmas to all those stems and see what happens. So basileus and naus and bous, when that digamma drops out, get replaced by vowels upsilon. So you get basileus, naus, and bous. Notice here that the one-syllable words are acting differently from the multi-syllable words, and you're seeing circumflexes in the one-syllable words. For the genitive singular, add your expected ending omicron sigma. The digamma in the middle drops out, and quantitative metathesis happens for basileos. Also quantitative metathesis for neos. But not for boos because there is no eta in that stem. It's simply two omicrons. We get a new stem which we'll then see in the dative singular basilei, and which becomes basilei with a circumflex. For the ship word and the ox word, that digamma simply drops out, and instead of those two vowels contracting, they remain separate syllables, so ne-e. The two dots over the iota are called a diaeresis, which is an editor's signal to you that they're to be pronounced as separate syllables, ne-e, and not as a diphthong. Same thing in bowie, which becomes bo-e. For the accusative singular, the first word uses an alpha, and the second two words use the nu for no good reason, but again, notice that that multisyllable basileus is behaving differently from the one-syllable words. So we get the alpha in basilea and the nu in noun and boon. For the vocative, it's simply that original stem ending in digamma, but of course the digamma falls out of the language, and we get diphthongs with, in fact, they're actually called glides, because your voice glides from one vowel to the next. So you get those in the vocative singular with upsilon. So basileu and nau and boo. For the nominative plural, you add your epsilon, sigma, and the epsilon drops out in basileus, but not in naus and bos. So you get basilas, but ne-s and bo-s, two-syllable words. Genitive singular is, as you would expect, simply that digamma just disappears. This is the only one where ship uses that other stem with new epsilon instead of new eta. Dative, plural, your expected sigma iota, and then again that stem plus digamma, the stem vowel plus the digamma becomes vowel plus upsilon in a glide, so basileusi and nausi. Accusative plural, the digamma drops out, and some of these vowels kind of come together in the naus and bous. In the basileus, it's still two separate syllables, basileas. And then the vocative plural is identical to the nominative plural. The end.